Welcome to the show. We'll have a full wrap of Super Rugby results along with the weekend action from the ANZ Championship tomorrow. But with the Highlanders on a break, let's catch up now with former All Black captain Stu Wilson to gauge his impression of the competition so far. Well, Stu, let's, in this break for the Highlanders, have a look back over the first 4 rounds. Not been fantastic for the New Zealand side, so let's start perhaps at the bottom of the Hurricanes, ultimately disappointing yet again.
Yeah, look, I always had a feeling that the Brumbies might be just a bit too good for the Canes at home. You know, they had to come back from South Africa, and I don't care what anyone says. You know, the Brumbies took 3 hours to get to Dunedin, and yet the Hurricanes took probably about 3 days to get back from South Africa. So, pretty quick turnaround. But then again, you know, a bit of disappointment. Mark Hammett under serious pressure now. And of course, the totem drums, Tom, are now calling for Tana Umanga to take up the reins of the Hurricanes. So they're under a bit of pressure, the Hurricanes. I think they've only got just the 1 point in all the games they've played. So, you know, they're struggling.
It's been a perennial problem for them, though, isn't it? It's the up front. They're just not securing good ball. They've got some promising backs, but just feeding on scraps. Yeah,
and I mean, the teams that normally win the Super 15 rugby or a Super title are basically teams that have a good forward pack, and if they have a couple of injuries, they've got guys on the reserve bench that just keep the engine going. And, you know, the Hurricanes will always struggle up front. You know, they'll go good for 2 or 3 games and they'll look, you know, world beaters. But when your forward pack starts to struggle, doesn't matter how many All Blacks you've got at you, doesn't matter how many Julian Severes and Corey James and these sort of guys, doesn't matter. You just got to have an 8 forward pack that does the business, and that's where they struggle, and they've been struggling that for a long time.
Similar problem for the Blues, really, particularly this morning. They started so poorly in the set pieces, got better, but again, they've got a good set of backs, but just not getting quality front foot ball to show their wares.
Well, that's right, you know, and although they've got a couple of Centurion forwards, props and hookers, Kevin Mealamu, you know, Tony Woodcock, over 100 games for New Zealand. You know, it gets back to who's got the good forward pack, and the Blues at times look really, really good. They've got athletes right across the park, but you know, you go up to the Bulls territory in South Africa, and you know exactly what you're going to get. You're going to get a big, ugly forward pack and a pretty conservative back line. So what I think the score was about 38-22. So they didn't even get a point. Did they get? I don't think they scored 4 tries. Did they, Tom?
No, they did not.
So you know, they're struggling. The idea is when you go to South Africa, the whole crux of this competition is to gather as many points as you can earlier on. And the Blues this morning couldn't even get a bonus point by staying within 7 points or getting 4 tries. And that's what you've got to do when New Zealand teams go to South Africa. You're not really expected to win, you know, 2 or 3 games on the road. If you do win one, it's a bonus. But what you've got to try and do is try and get a bonus point on the way and come back with 1 or 2 points. And so the Blues this morning, no points, no bonus points. So their position on the points ladder remains static. And this whole competition is about gathering points on the ladder. It's a bit like the English Premiership. But if you don't bounce out quickly, like, you know, the Hurricanes are struggling. The Crusaders were struggling up until, you know, last night. So they had no points after 2 or 3 games, after a couple of games, the Crusaders. So they were struggling, but they got points now.
Well, they did need a win, and they got one, and their forward pack is starting to come right, and therefore they're getting a little bit of success. But it's a far cry from the Crusader teams of past yet, isn't it?
Yeah, well, look, I was watching a bit of that game last night, and, you know, poor old Todd Blackadder, you know, he can't do anything about the errors. You know, like, I saw 1 or 2 guys. Let's take a very tidy footballer called Tom Taylor. He goes into the he's got the ball. He goes for a bit of a run. He gets hit in a tackle, and then suddenly the ball pops out. That's a handling error, an error that just goes on the stats. Now, Todd Blackadder must be pulling his hair out, because if the Crusaders reduce their error rate, and at one stage there, I think they had 50 errors in the first 2 games. Now, I remember when they won the competition, got to the final a couple of years ago when they were on the road or every game, they probably had 50 errors for the entire season. They chalked up 50 errors in the first 2 games. Now, you're not going to win a game of rugby by that. If they reduce those small errors, then they're on the way because, Tom, they do have a forward pack that can actually go from game to game to game. You know, when you see All Blacks on the bench, you know, and you see an All Black front row, you see 2 All Black locks, and you see 3 All Blacks in the loose forwards, then they've got a good forward pack. But the error rate's too high, and Todd Blackadder can't do anything about that. That is purely an individual thing, and it's the way you prepare for the game. I thought they were better last night. You know, they had a little bit more fizz, they had a bit more purpose to their game. But in saying that, my God, I thought the Stormers were outstanding. You know, they were operating on nothing. And yet, you know, they defended their line, I think, in that first half for 20 minutes. They'll be the best defensive situation I've seen for many years. You know, they never, and the Crusaders threw everything at them and they couldn't break them. Fantastic game of footy.
Well, one team that has, of the New Zealand franchises, that have shown great defence, and that's the Chiefs, because they've been running on a pretty lean squad for the first couple of weeks, come away with 2 wins and now getting some players back, so it's working out well for them. Yeah,
well, look, they've just carried on as we've seen in the last 2 years. You know, I remember when the Chiefs play, who did they play in the first game? Was it the Crusaders, was it?
Correct.
Well, you know, that was brutality. I mean, that's the local derby. And I think the Crusaders got a little bit surprised on the ferocity and the determination and the character and the courage of the Chiefs' defensive line. You know, and they always say, unless you've got a good defensive screen, you're never going to win anything. And they've just carried on. They are the title holders for the last 2 years, and they look as if they want a 3rd title in a row. And they've only played 2 games. They've had a bye. They've got a few guys coming back. They're well coached. They've got really, really good leaders. I think Liam Messon, what I've seen in the first couple of games, you can understand why Steve Hansen wants him always in that forward pack. He is just enormous. Mm. And you've got a couple of they've got great halfbacks. They've got good midfield, and they've got a couple of flyers at the back. So they've got a perfect balance. And they haven't yet struck form with scoring, you know, big tries. They're just gutsing it out, saying, okay, you've got the ball, you get past us. And a lot of teams aren't. And so they've got away. They've started really, really well with a couple of wins, so they've got points on the ladder. And that's what it's all about. I'll go back to it. You've got to gather points in every game. Even if you lose, you've got to try and get a bonus point of staying within 7 points of the winning team, or try and score 4 tries. It's all about gathering points.
And that's exactly what the Highlanders have done, and they had a win and of course a bonus point loss, and showing a lot of enthusiasm and vigour, which we're enjoying down here.
Yeah, I was fortunate enough to meet Jamie Joseph last Sunday. I had a beer with him, and I thought he was a bit stiff that night. They got beat, but I thought that they probably, with a bit of luck, could have won that game. And it's just a bit different, isn't it, from what we saw last year? There's some new boys in there. They've just got, I think it all comes back to attitude. They must have looked at what they did last year, and a lot of the guys are still there. They've lost a few, but they thought, well, last year, 2013, wasn't a great year for the Highlanders. So they had probably a big meeting, a bit of soul searching, a bit of honesty, and said the only way, you win a game of rugby is you've just got to get up for the game. And you've got to have some attitude. If you don't have an attitude of going out and trying to win the game and be aggressive and have this really big ego, go out and hammer them, you're not going to win anything. You're certainly not going to win a game in South Africa. So they've just got a same coach. A lot of the old players are there. But, the thing is, they've got a good attitude this year, and they've got away to a good start.
So not too concerned. Early days, isn't it, to judge any team? So, in 3 or 4 weeks' time, we'll have a much better view, won't we, of how the New Zealand franchises may be faring.
Yeah. Out of all our teams so far, the shining light is yet again on the Chiefs. They just look as if they just want to win another one. And their attitude, and they've got a hellishly good coaching staff. And, you try and beat them down at Waikato, at the Waikato Stadium, it's pretty tough there. But the test is when you get on the road, you get on a plane. If the Chiefs go away, play in South Africa, win a game if they can, get some bonus points. If they do win a game over there, then they're going to be very hard to beat again.